from San Francisco, California. Please turn on your audio and please proceed, Zach. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zach, and I didn't start out wanting to be a transportation disability activist. It's something that came about through necessity, fighting for my right to get onto buses. What a lot of people don't realize is that folks with disability and seniors often live in kind of a different universe where stereotype and stigma and resentment really shows itself in confrontation when we try to board buses that we don't seek out. And we've had to struggle in a lot of ways to access some basic needs, and transportation's one of them. Now, passengers will often yell, cuss, harass, even physically assault me for trying to get on the bus. Sometimes, drivers yell at me as well and won't let me on. And this would happen so frequently that I was afraid to leave my house, afraid to go into my community, see my friends, go to the grocery store. And so I decided to do something about it. I started to record these incidents with my cell phone and posting them to YouTube. You can find these videos on YouTube if you search Zachary, San Francisco, disability, transportation, those kind of keywords. And originally I did think the problem was the drivers, but as I began to do some public records requests, realized that this is happening to thousands of people across the city, hundreds of complaints filed every year, and I started to speak at the Mayor's Office on Disability, started to speak to the executive board of the transit agency, going to every meeting I could find, publishing an article in the newspaper. I found out that the city couldn't care less. We're not addressing this problem at all. And when I was in one of the ADA hearings, which is actually a driver disciplinary hearing, I learned that the city was only punishing drivers punitively, which wasn't solving anything. I learned that drivers were actually punished for picking up people in wheelchairs, people with disabilities and seniors, anyone with special needs. Takes a little bit of extra time. Well, that time would come out of drivers' breaks, being able to have a lunch, go to the bathroom, or the time they would get off work to see their families. I learned from one of the grievance processes that the union representative spoke up and said they weren't getting the customer service trainings that their contract said they were supposed to get every year. And so after doing community activism, filing a lawsuit, I eventually started working with the union. And right from the bat, the head of Local 250A, Roger Marenko, got stuff done. Whereas the city had ignored me for years, the union started to meet with me one-on-one, started to meet with the community, come to our disability meetings at City Hall and with various nonprofits, and began to put things into action for positive reinforcement, positive incentivization for drivers to board us and focus on education rather than punishment. So I'm here to share with you some good news. We've actually managed to secure the customer service trainings in the union contract. We now have a new disability complaint webpage on the transportation website. We now have a new disability complaint form on the transportation website. And the union is working closely with our community so that we can have our perspectives shared in the training and education of drivers, so that we can change the old attitudes, as Ed Roberts said, and work together with our communities. I want to share this story with you all, and that's why I'm sharing this all today, as a positive perspective of what can happen when we change the divide and conquer narrative that pits our communities against one another, pits workers against riders, and the various ways that we're divided. When we come together and find that common ground, might be surprised at the amazing things we can accomplish.
So thank you to everyone that participated. But I wanted to return back to Zach's testimony, because I believe he said at one point that he was afraid to leave his house. And I remember reading a study a couple years ago that as many as maybe 500,000 people with disabilities share that experience, that they're not only they're afraid to leave their houses, not only because there isn't access to transportation, but because of the stigma that they have to confront. And Zach, I think you mentioned that you had a YouTube channel, which is great. I work with a local organization in San Francisco called Media Alliance. We try to amplify voices like yours. So I'll try to get in touch with you about that. But I'm wondering if you might want to comment on whether you feel that, whether the media or social media or what you're doing could do a better job or is doing a good job at maybe confronting some of that stigma that you talked about.
That's a great question, and I would love to get in touch with you and
Do that.
work with you. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, in the course of this journey, I have reached out to many media outlets, many local media outlets. A lot of my presentations and work that I've done, I reach out to every media outlet that I can, and I wish I could say that the media was doing enough. Unfortunately, disability rights are not fashionable at the moment. They are not sort of in vogue, I guess you could say. We are, as one friend of mine, advocate, who sometimes put it, is we are the forgotten stepchild of the civil rights movement. And that legacy continues today. Now, that is changing. There is a new documentary called Crip Camp, which was on Netflix and is now available free on YouTube, the entire feature. And that has won a ton of awards and is the first time that we've actually had a history of our own captured in film in a major documentary reaching lots and lots of people, millions of people. And so that's starting to change a little bit. But I would love to work with you and any media, any newspapers that are interested in speaking about this more, because in my experience, at least here in San Francisco, very hard to get anyone interested in telling this story.